Mr. Candub, I enjoyed our conversation the other day, and congratulations on your nomination. Let's start, if we could, by talking a little bit about antitrust and individual liberty. Something that you said recently caught my eye. You said antitrust law, and I'm going to quote you now, can combat dominant firms' baleful effects on democratic institutions such as free speech, the marketplace of ideas, and shareholder control. I assume that's still your opinion.
It is, Senator.
I take that to mean that antitrust analysis under federal law is not therefore limited to consumer price. Is that a fair inference?
I support the consumer welfare standard, of course, but it can be measured by other things than simply price.
Yeah, and this is my point. I mean, the Sherman Act protects competition by outlawing a restraint of trade and monopolization more broadly. It nowhere mentions consumer welfare. Now, courts, of course, have constructed the consumer welfare standard, but antitrust laws apply to products that are ostensibly free to consumers. Would you agree with that?
I believe so.
So let me just ask you, how do you think the antitrust division should assess competitive impact in markets that are dominated by tech firms that do not have readily comparable market prices? In other words, that hold out their products much of the time as being completely 100% free.
Certainly, I would always look to ensure that there is an actual anti-competitive harm, which would require using the traditional tests of market power, and I'm not at all interested in abandoning them. However, I do believe, as you pointed out, Senator, that there are instances in which our civil rights, particularly free speech, can be at issue, and in those situations, the division should act to protect Americans.
Is it fair to say then that under your leadership, the division would not treat this claim that the price is zero as a reason to close an investigation into a dominant platform?
Zero pricing goods like social media present a very interesting and puzzling, sometimes to economists, challenge on how to value that. However, I do not believe at all that simply because something is zero price that it necessarily escapes antitrust scrutiny.
Good. Okay, good. I think that's a very important principle to get established, because that is, as you know, the common defense of all of these tech companies as to why they should elude any antitrust scrutiny at the outset. Let me ask you about another implication of antitrust. In the social media market, there are roughly 3 firms, maybe at most, that dominate overwhelmingly the content that reaches the average 12-year-old in this country. Now, I'm a father of 3 children, all that age and younger. Let me just ask you, do you regard that kind of concentration as properly the concern of the antitrust division?
Certainly. As we all know from our antitrust classes, bigness is not necessarily bad. Concentration is but the first step, but it's the first step. And markets that are concentrated will, of course, get the attention of my division, should I be so fortunate as to be confirmed.
Good. That's exactly what I'm driving at. And let me just give you the perspective of one parent, which is that when there's no competition for parental controls, no competition out there that would allow a parent to choose greater safety for his children or her children, then you're leaving essentially the parents totally at the mercy of the platforms. In this case, the fact that there's just 2 or 3 dominant platforms, none of whom have any real interest, let me just call it like it is, any real interest whatsoever in protecting children online. In fact, who have a massive financial interest in pushing the most exploitative material possible, and certainly the most addictive material possible, to all of our children online, because it benefits them financially. You know, that leaves me and millions of other parents like me nowhere to go. And I think the fact that there's no robust competition is a huge part of this problem. I would just like to ask you if you will commit to coordinating with the FTC, which has some jurisdiction here, as well as state attorneys general, to prioritize child safety online. Will that be a priority for you?
Absolutely, sir.
Good. Well, my time has expired, and a radical departure from my normal practice, I will cease and desist here. But I will have questions for the record. I'm sure other folks on the panel are just devastated I didn't ask you questions. So I'll give you some questions for the record as well. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you, Madam Chair.